You know, we talked about a lot of other things, including his relationship with lawmakers in Lansing, and going into this next year and taking a look at some of the items on his agenda. But what we were talking about here, the three of us, was we've got an election coming up in Detroit next year. And I did say at the beginning of my conversation with him that he's always said he wants to be judged on the growth of population, which essentially means making lives better for Detroiters and making sure that more people want to stay in the city. Has he achieved that kind of going into this election year? I'm going to start with you, Stephen.
Well, I mean, according to our statistician at the Free Press, no. I mean, the person who keeps track of census numbers says that we still are net losing people. It's
not
lower.
As bad as it was.
It's nowhere near what it was when he took office, but that we probably won't see a net increase. Now, the mayor says he's got different numbers. I mean, last time I asked him about it, he said, no, that's taken care of. We are growing population. And I heard Tom Lawand at another function say the same thing in front of a big room of people. So that's their story
but
now.
But then can you say, though, but then judge him on improving the services or improving the lives of Detroiters?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got $170 million more to work with thanks to the bankruptcy, and he's devoted most of that to service improvement. I talked to him the other day, and he said revenues are going up, which was another key sort of indicator of the city's long-term viability. Tax collections and compliance are going up. Bigger question is who's going to run against him, and I don't hear any real credible names as possibilities to challenge him for re-election should he decide to run.
Well, no, the question is always what would your message be, right?
You mean running against him?
Running against him.
Yeah.
What would you say that you would do that he's not doing, or what would you say you would do better that he is doing? I think it's a shorter list than you typically have after 4 years. Yeah. Of someone being in office, and that suggests that he's probably doing a pretty creditable job. You know, we will see somebody, I'm sure, stand up and take a run, and we should.
Where's Tom Barrow? He's still out
Tom Barrow's still
around. How many times has he run?
But I think that's important. I do think it's important that we have contested elections. I don't like. You know, elections by sort of just sort of perfunctory.
But you know, you've got this is not a partisan race, and yet it's a one-party town. You're not going to really get the sort of vigorous type of competitive election as you would in a two-party system.
But we have had that before. I mean, the Kwame Kilpatrick re-election against Freeman Hendricks.
That's
the first election.
The last one I can remember, and the only one I can
well,
remember.
when Kwame left, we had Warren Evans, Ken Cockrell, and Dave Bing. It was an open seat. I mean, it happens.
So let me ask you this. You know, there have been years that we've ended in December and talked about the future of the city of Detroit, and things have been pretty bleak. But looking at 2017, what are some of the biggest issues that we're going to have to tackle in the city of Detroit? I would put education at the top of that.
Well, yes,
top of that list.
Seeing how the new school board works out and whether they're capable of delivering the sort of results that people are going to expect. But I also feel we're about to turn a pretty major corner in the redevelopment of downtown if some of these skyscraper-style developments that we haven't seen around here in an awful long time, that Gilbert and others are talking about, if they start to go up, that's a major turning point for downtown. That would, I mean, we wouldn't recognize this place in 5 years if those projects get underway.
That kind of thing.
What do you think?
I mean, I think there's always the crime issue that most people who live in the city, who live in neighborhoods, live with all the time, and I think the response to crime looks different. There's no question that the police are more responsive to it, trying to be more on top of it. I don't know that most citizens would say that they feel that crime is all that different. Right?
Mayor Duggan said that something that they need to work on also is still the homicide rate.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's still too high. It's still too dangerous in the city for people who often, are just sitting around, not doing anything, not bothering anybody.
Still get too many kids randomly shot. Yeah. These aren't kids who are out there gang banging or involved in trouble, standing in front of their homes. These are 2- and 3-year-olds.
There's still
again,
a lot of that.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've had more of those.
And then the opportunity question, right? If you live in a neighborhood that hasn't experienced this redevelopment or reinvestment, the city still looks pretty bleak. I mean, poverty is hugely widespread across the city. Isolation, which I've written about a couple times this year, is a new dynamic in that poverty. People who live in extremely poor places and can't get to any place else really because of our lack of transit and things like that. Those are things that I think are going to continue to.
In the couple of seconds that we have left yet, are we still looking at, Nolan, this new Detroit, two Detroits?
I think
problem?
so. I mean, I think for precisely the reason Steve says. I mean, downtown, what's going on downtown is fabulous. It's still not inclusive enough. I mean, there's still too many places that there is no diversity when you walk in the door. But beyond that, the offices, the lofts downtown are not diverse enough. And I think that's what it's going to...
Participation in that development
Right.
is not diverse.
And I think that's a first step towards spreading it out into the neighborhoods.
All right, well, that's going to do it.